So how to find the vertex, focus, and directrix of any parabola, and then sketch the graph. So I'll start out with little notes, then we'll do 3 examples. So to start with, this is probably the most general form of the equation right here. So y equals some number times x minus h squared plus k. So notes-wise, this would be what you're interested in. First off, this equation looks something like this. So let me put a xy plane in here. So here's x, here's y. And if you were to graph that, it might look like this. Or it could open down, depending on values. But in any case, that is your vertex, hk. Your focus is a point here where this distance is, I'm going to call P. And then the directrix is a line here where this distance is negative P, or just it's P in the opposite direction. So that's generally what any of these graphs look like. So just kind of going through the most important things, vertex would be h comma k. Already kind of came up with that. Where you change the signs anytime you come out of parentheses there. Okay, the k wouldn't, that value wouldn't change. Your focus is found, your focus slash directrix is found by first finding the value of p. And so let me define p. P is somewhat important. P is the distance from the vertex to directrix, or from the vertex to the focus. And I have it listed here. Kind of shows you what it would be. Now there's some really cool properties for parabolas, and there's a reason we learn these, but let's just get you through the algebra today. So once you find P, and how do you find P? Well, what you do to find P is you let A equal 1 over 4P. And then you solve that. And so once you solve that and you have P, our focus when the equation's in this form would be h comma k plus p. And if your directrix, since it's a line, would be the equation y equals k minus p. So that's the main notes you need when the formula looks like that. Okay, what happens if you solve for x? So you could have the formula being this. X equals a y minus k squared plus h. So in this case, here's my xy plane. Things are a little bit different. So we could have a vertex here, and the focus, and the parabola could look something like this, where this is your vertex, this is h comma k. Your focus could be about in here somewhere, and again this distance is p. And then your directrix is going to be back here, also a distance of p from your vertex. Okay, so equation-wise it would look like this. Your vertex again, but you got to be careful because notice h and k are in different spots. It would still be hk because of the way I wrote it. Your focus could still be found by setting a equal to 1 over 4p, solving that for p. And so your focus equation also changes. And so in this case, it would be h plus p comma k. And your directrix would be x equals h minus p. Okay, so once you have those notes in tow, put them on a note card or something, go through and do some of these examples, and I'll do them with you. So here's your first example. X squared plus 8x minus y plus 6 equals 0. Notice it is not in any of the forms we've talked about. So the first step you're going to have to do is get it in one of these forms, either this one or this one. And what you do is you look at, first off, is it a parabola? Well, if you have an x squared term and a y term, then we know this is a parabola. And in this case, and so I'm going to solve for y. So the first step I do is move the y and the 6 to the right. So I'm going to add y to both sides of the equation and subtract 6 from both sides of the equation. And leave this x squared plus 8x kind of together. And so you would have y minus 6 equals x squared plus 8x. Okay, next you have to do what's called completing the square, because we want to get this to a point where we can factor it. So what you do is you take your middle term, which in this case would be the 8. Divide it by 2 and square it. So off to the side, I'm going to take 8 divided by 2 and then square it. And 8 divided by 2 is 4. 4 squared is 16. So that means I'm going to add 16 to both sides of the equation. And by doing that, you really haven't added anything. It's they would cancel out if you subtracted those out. And so my equation now becomes y plus 10 equals, and then this factors. It factors to x and x, plus plus is a plus plus, and 4 is what 16 breaks into. And you can check that, and indeed it does work. And so you'd have x plus 4 squared. Then the final step is to move the 10 over, and you've got it. So y equals x plus 4 squared minus 10. So I know my vertex is -4, -10. My p, since there's no number here in the front, that means there's a 1 there. So a equals 1 over 4p is the equation. So 1 equals 1 over 4p. Well, if you cross multiply that, you'd have 1 over 1 equals 4p, and you cross multiply, so you'd have 4p equals 1. So p would equal to 1/4. So next, you go ahead and graph that. I think we're ready to go ahead and graph. And your directrix, remember, your directrix was, since we solved for y, in this case, got y by itself, our directrix is k minus p. Well, so it's y equals k minus p, and I guess we need our focus as well. So it would be -10 minus 1/4. So it'd be -10 and 1/4. And our focus is going to be h comma k plus p. So our h again was -4, and our k plus p, well, it was -10 plus 1/4, so -1 3/4. And that's our focus. And now we're ready to graph all this stuff. So you go left 4 down 10, be about right here. Your focus would be up 1/4 from that, so it'd be kind of hard to see. And your directrix would be down 1/4 from that. Well, that tells me this is going to be a very, very narrow graph. And so once you have those things listed, and you kind of have everything off to the side, so we have, that's what we need to find. You just go ahead at this point and just come up with a table. So I'm going to pick a couple values. And remember, this is your axis of symmetry, because hopefully you've graphed these before. anything on the right can be graphed on the left. So I'm going to pick an easy one here and pick 0. Plug it into our function. So you'd have 0 plus 4 squared minus 10. Well, that's 16 minus 10, and that's 6. So 0, 6 is a point on my parabola. Then you can mirror that, and there's another point on my parabola. And so this is what the parabola generally looks like. And depending on who you have as a teacher, they're going to ask for more or less points. Maybe the x-intercepts. We found the y-intercept. That's kind of nice. But we're running out of time, so let's look at another example. Okay, this one in particular, I'll skip this one. We'll come back to it. So this one's one where we have to solve for x. Go ahead and see if you can do this, and then play the video, because I'm going to go through this fast so I can get it done. So the first thing I would do, subtract the 4x, subtract the 8, over to the other side. And so you would have negative 4x minus 8 equals y squared plus 8y. And I'm also using the symmetric property to flip them across the equal sign. Then you would complete the square. Again, I ended up with an 8. I apologize, I should have come up with a different example. But it would be 8 divided by 2, again our middle term, squared, which would be 16. You add that to both sides. So plus 16 plus 16. And we'd have, I'm going to write it off to the left here, negative 4x plus 8 equals, and then this factors to y plus 4 squared. Now solve for x, and you'd have negative 4x equals y plus 4 squared minus 8, and then divide everything by negative 4. And what you'd have is x equals, I always bring this out front, so that's my a term, plus 2. And so notice this is the other form where I solve for x. So my hk is going to be slightly different. In this case, it's going to be 2, negative 4. My focus is going to be found by taking negative 1/4, setting it equal to 1 over 4p and cross multiplying. So when you do that, you'd have negative 4p equals 4, and so p is equal to negative 1. That tells me my focus is going to be to the left. And you can find that really quickly with that formula for focus, which was h plus p comma k. So 2 plus a negative 1 is 1, negative 4. That's my focus. And my directrix is h minus p, which would be 2 minus a negative 1, which would be 3, whoops, sorry, not that, but y equals, x equals, not y equals, take a look at your notes, y equals 3. So let's graph this really quickly, and we would have a focus of 2, negative 4. We have a, vertex of 2, negative 4. We have a focus of 1, negative 4, so there's my focus. And we have a directrix of y equals 3. There's my directrix. Now my axis of symmetry lies in this direction. So anything I graph above that line will mirror below it. And so what I would do now that I have this is with this equation, plug in values for y, but still keep x, y in that direction. So I'm going to put in 0. I always like that one. So if you put in 0, you would have x equals negative 1/4 times 0 plus 4 squared plus 2. So figure that out. Well, that'd be 16. 16 times a negative 1/4 is negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2. And so negative 2, 0 is my x-intercept. And then you could also mirror that. Notice there's 1, 2, 3, 4 to the axis of symmetry, so 4 down, 1, 2, 3, 4. And for the most part, this is what my parabola looks like. Other than I can't quite get there. And so I'm out of time. I wish we could have gotten to that third example, but this gives you pretty much anything you'd need to know to find this. with GeoGebra, it's really easy to graph them anyway. So best of luck, and see you next time.